A black SUV idles at the curb of a forgotten fire station in a small Ohio town. The driver does not get out yet. He is waiting. 3 blocks east, in a small white house, an old woman sits beside a window with a half-finished blue scarf in her lap. She has been knitting it for 18 years. She has not let herself finish. Inside the station, behind a wall of cinder block that does not match the brick behind 6 steel lockers bolted to the floor, a door has been sealed since the spring of 2017. A boy with $43 and a Polaroid has just bought the building. For $10. He does not know what is behind the wall. He does not know who is waiting. He does not know that across the street, a man in a hardware store has just picked up a phone with a hand that will not stop shaking. The folder on the desk was thin, thinner than a magazine, thinner than the 18 years it was supposed to contain. Caleb Whitaker sat in the plastic chair across from the caseworker. He was 18 years old. He had been 18 for 6 days. And in those 6 days, the state of Ohio had decided he was no longer its responsibility. The caseworker pushed the tissue box toward him for the 3rd time. He had not cried. She kept pushing it anyway, as if the box were a script she had memorized, as if she did not know what else to do with her hands. "Do you have any questions, Caleb?" He looked at the folder. He looked at her. He looked back at the folder. "That's it. That's everything we have." He opened it. A birth certificate. Mother, Rosalind Whitaker, deceased. Father, August Whitaker, deceased. Both dates the same. October 14th, 2007. A Polaroid. A toddler on a linoleum floor. Clothes 2 sizes too big. The eyes looking at something past the camera. Something the camera could not see. Hospital intake records. 6 months old. Left at a fire station. The town not named. 7 foster placements. Listed on 1 page. No notes. They just ended. The way a sentence ends. Without warning. Without reason. With a small black period. "You'll get a check," the caseworker said. $43, the remainder of your allowance. Caleb put the check in his wallet. He put the wallet in his back pocket. He put the Polaroid in the same wallet, behind a folded receipt from a gas station in a town he no longer remembered. He picked up his duffel bag, 2 changes of clothes, a toothbrush, a phone charger, a paperback novel he had been reading for 3 months, because he kept losing his place. And every time he lost his place, he started over. And every time he started over, he forgot he had already started over. "Is there somewhere you can go, Caleb?" He looked at her. "Yeah," he said. He did not have anywhere to go. The first week was the hardest, because he kept expecting it to get easier. He slept behind a strip mall. There was a maintenance shed. The cameras did not reach the back wall of it. He had watched the security guards route for 2 nights to be sure. In 7 foster homes, this was how you stayed out of trouble. You watched. You learned the patterns. You disappeared into the spaces the patterns did not see. He ate at a soup kitchen on Tuesdays and Thursdays. The other days he bought bread. A loaf lasted 3 days if he rationed it. Peanut butter stretched to 5. He washed his clothes in a gas station sink at 2 in the morning. The fluorescent lights buzzed above him. The water came out cold. He wrung the shirts out by hand and put them on wet and let his body heat dry them by morning. He kept a small notebook in his back pocket. He had bought it for 99 cents at a dollar store before he had even left Cleveland. Every night before he slept, he wrote one line, just one, about something he had learned that day. Day 1. The county does not give you a coat in October. Day 3. If you sleep with your shoes on, nobody can steal them. Day 6. Hunger is louder at night than during the day. He was not sure why he was writing it down, but the writing kept him alive in a way the bread did not. By the second week, he had $19. The math did not work. He could not afford to eat and exist at the same time. His phone died on a Thursday. He did not have money for a charge. The public library wanted $1 an hour for the outlet. Without the phone, he lost the soup kitchen schedule. He walked 12 blocks for a meal that was not there anymore. The location had changed. There had been no way to know. He drank from a park fountain. He sat on a bench. He tried to remember the last time someone had said his name out loud. He could not. So he started walking, not toward anything, just away. The way a leaf moves when the wind decides for it. A trucker picked him up at a rest stop outside Columbus. The man was old, 60 maybe, 65. He wore a flannel shirt and smelled like coffee and motor oil. He did not ask questions. He turned up the radio. He drove. Caleb watched Ohio pass through the window. Small towns, boarded storefronts, gas stations with hand-painted signs, a church with white paint peeling from its steeple, a field where someone had planted a flag and forgotten it. The flag was still there. The pole was bent. Everything looked like it belonged to somebody else. The trucker dropped him at a junction. The sign said, Millbrook Falls. Population 4,000. The trucker raised one hand without looking at him. He drove on. The diesel engine faded. Then it was gone. Then there was only wind in the trees. Caleb stood at the side of the road for a long time. He counted what was in his wallet. $11. He had spent the other $8 on a sandwich and a bottle of water at a gas station outside Columbus. The sandwich had not been worth it. But hunger had not asked his opinion. $11. Then he started walking again. The diner sat on the edge of town. One story. Brick. A neon sign in the window that said, Open in pink letters. The O was flickering. Caleb pushed the door. A bell rang above his head. The bell sounded like a memory of a bell. Old, tin, honest. The woman behind the counter was maybe 60. White hair pinned up. Apron tied twice around her waist because she was small. She looked at Caleb the way people look at weather they were not expecting. Not unfriendly. Just considering. Sit anywhere, hon. He sat at the counter. She brought him a coffee without asking. Then water. Then a menu. The menu was laminated and the corners were peeling. He looked at the prices and looked at his wallet and looked at the prices again. I'm just having the coffee, he said. She did not say anything. She went to the kitchen. He heard a pan. He heard butter. He heard eggs cracking. She came back 5 minutes later with a plate. 2 eggs, 3 pieces of bacon, toast, hash browns, coffee refilled. She set it down in front of him. I didn't order this. I know. I can't pay. I know that too. She did not move. She stood across the counter with her arms folded and looked at him until he picked up the fork. Then she nodded once, as if a small piece of business had been completed, as if the contract she had with the world required her to feed a boy who walked in with a duffel bag and a face that had not seen a real meal in a month. She wiped the counter while he ate. She did not speak. When he finished, she took the plate. She refilled the coffee. She refilled it again. She brought him a piece of pie he had not ordered. Apple. The crust had been made by hand. He could see the thumbprint along the edge. Where you headed, son? I don't know. That's a fine place to be headed if you don't mind the long road. He looked at her. My name is Delphine, she said. If you find yourself back this way, you eat here. You don't pay. That's the rule of this counter. I made it. I keep it. Why? She looked at him for a long moment. Because some towns know how to keep a person, sweetheart, and some towns don't. The trick is figuring out which is which. He did not understand her. Not yet. He folded the napkin and put it on the empty plate. Thank you, ma'am. Delphine. Delphine. She walked him to the door. She put a folded $20 bill in his hand. He tried to give it back. She closed his fingers around it and held them closed. You walk into Millbrook proper from here. About a mile. There's a courthouse with a bulletin board out front. Read what's on it. Why? Just read it, sweetheart. She turned the open sign to closed. Even though it was 11 in the morning, even though there were no other customers, she stood in the window and watched him walk away. He walked the mile. He did not look back, but he could feel her watching the whole way. Millbrook Falls had one main street, the kind of main street built when people still walked to where they were going. A hardware store on the corner, a diner, a barber shop with a red and white pole that was no longer turning, a courthouse with a bulletin board out front. Caleb walked up the courthouse steps. He stopped at the bulletin board. Flyers, lost dog, a bake sale at the Methodist church, a piano lesson, a barn cat that needed a home, a man named Floyd selling firewood by the cord. And at the bottom, in black ink on white paper, County Tax Auction, Saturday, 10 a.m., 12 properties, minimum bids listed. He read the list. Vacant lots, a condemned house, a garage, a trailer parcel. And the last entry, former fire station number 7, Briggs Road, minimum bid, $10. He read it twice. He stepped back from the board. He read it a third time. $10. $10 was the one thing he could still afford. He stood on the courthouse steps for a long time. The wind moved through the maple trees. A church bell rang somewhere. 2 blocks away. 3. He could not tell. The sound traveled the way sound travels in small towns. It belonged to everyone. $10 and a building he could not heat, could not sell, could not live in. It was the worst financial decision a person with $31 could make. He spent Friday night under the overhang of a closed gas station on the edge of town. He watched his breath in the air. He ran the math over and over. The answer never changed. By morning, he had decided to do it anyway. Saturday was overcast. Caleb walked to the courthouse. 30 people sat in folding chairs on the lawn. A clerk read property descriptions into a microphone. The clerk was a woman, maybe 40. Her hair pulled back tight, reading glasses on a chain. She read each description with the same flat patience. The lots went fast. A house sold for $1,200. A man in a polo shirt barely looked up from his phone. A vacant lot sold for $400. A woman bought it as a favor to someone on the phone. The bidders knew each other. They nodded. They raised their paddles with the ease of people spending money they would not miss. Caleb sat in the back row. He waited. The fire station came up last. Property 12, former fire station number 7, Briggs Road, single-story brick, approximately 4,000 square feet, decommissioned in 2018. County assessment notes structural deterioration, standing water. Minimum bid is $10. Nobody moved. A few people shifted in their chairs. Someone in the back row whispered something. The woman next to her covered her mouth. "Do I have $10? Caleb raised his hand. Everyone turned. A boy with a duffel bag and worn sneakers, sitting in the last row of folding chairs, with his hand up like he was answering a question in school. The clerk paused. For just a second, long enough that he noticed. $10 from the young man, she said. Do I hear $15? Silence. Going once. Going twice. She let the silence hang. The wind moved through the maples on the courthouse lawn. A man in the third row crossed his arms and looked at the ground. Sold. Nobody clapped. Nobody congratulated him. A woman in the second row turned around. She looked at Caleb. Her face was set in an expression that was not unkind. But it was not encouraging either. It was the expression of someone watching a child reach for a stove. The man in the polo shirt shook his head once, gathered his papers, walked to his truck without looking back. Caleb followed the clerk into the courthouse. He signed the deed inside her office. The deed was a single page. He paid with Delphine's 20. She handed him 10 back and a key on a plain metal ring. She looked at him over her reading glasses. You know what you're getting into, son? No. She almost smiled, but the smile did not reach her eyes. And just as he turned to leave with the key in his palm and the deed folded inside his duffel, she spoke again, quieter this time, as if the words were for herself more than for him. Some folks in this town will tell you that station has a person still watching over it. I wouldn't go listening to that talk. I'd just be careful with the place. That's all. He stopped at the doorway. What do you mean? She looked at him a long time. Nothing, sweetheart. Just an old town thing. You go on now. He walked out into the gray morning with a deed in his duffel and a key in his fist, and the woman's words turning over inside his chest. A person still watching over it. He found the station 3 blocks off the main street, set back from the road, on a cracked concrete pad. Brick walls darkened by years of weather. 2 wide bay doors at the front, both jammed halfway open. weeds in every crack. The building looked like something the town had decided to forget. He stood on the pad and stared at it. He thought about the caseworker's folder, about Delphine's $20 bill, about the clerk's almost smile, about the way the woman in the second row had turned around to look at him with something close to worry on her face. He thought about the trucker. He thought about his mother. A name on a birth certificate. Rosalind Whitaker. A woman he had never heard speak. He ducked under the bay door. He stepped inside. The truck bay took up the front of the building. Wide concrete floor stained dark with oil. Half the ceiling tiles collapsed. Standing water near a clogged drain. Broken glass along the far wall. But the brick was solid. The steel beams above showed surface rust, and nothing worse. The floor under the mess was level. Caleb had learned enough from his third foster father to know the difference between a building that was dying and a building that had just been left alone too long. This one was waiting. Nobody had bothered to finish what neglect had started. He walked the length of the bay. He touched a wall. Cold. He looked up. The light through the broken windows fell in pale stripes across the concrete. Past the bay, a cinder block partition, a hallway, rooms on either side, a bathroom, no door on the hinges, a kitchen with a counter, a sink, nothing else. A bunk room with 4 metal bed frames bolted to the wall, the mattresses long gone. He tested the faucets, dry. He flipped the switches, dead. The building had been cut off from everything, but the pipes were intact. The breaker panel still had switches in it. Reconnection was possible. Not today. Not cheap. But possible. He climbed a steel ladder bolted to the wall. A storage loft. Plywood floor. Cardboard boxes full of old forms. Outdated fire code manuals. Nothing useful. But through the loft window he could see the whole street. The hardware store across the way. The diner 2 blocks down. The courthouse where he had signed his name an hour ago. The Methodist church with its white steeple. The barber's red and white pole. A town that did not know he was here yet. He climbed back down. He stood in the empty bay. He breathed in. The building smelled like dust, like wet concrete, like cold brick that had not been warmed by a body in 7 years. That afternoon, he walked back to a small grocery store he had passed on Main Street. He bought a loaf of bread, a jar of peanut butter, a bottle of water, a small plastic flashlight. The total came to $8.73. He put the change in his wallet. He had $9 left. He walked back to the station and sat on the concrete pad. He ate 2 slices of bread with peanut butter. He drank a third of the water. He counted his money one more time, just to be sure. $9. Then he went to work clearing the bay. A push broom in the utility closet handled the broken glass. He dragged fallen ceiling tiles into a pile near the door. He unclogged the drain with a piece of wire in his bare hands. The standing water drained on its own once the blockage was clear. By evening, he had a clean rectangle of concrete in the far corner of the bay. He unrolled his sleeping bag. He sat against the brick wall. He looked around the cleared space. The concrete was clean. The walls stood straight. The beams held the roof without complaint. It was a simple thing. maybe the simplest thing in the world. But Caleb could not remember the last time he had been somewhere that felt this solid. Every foster home, thin walls, shared rooms, rules posted on the fridge. This was 4,000 square feet of nobody telling him where to sit. The station was quiet. Wind moved through the broken windows, hummed low against the bay doors. No traffic, no voices. He pulled the Polaroid from his wallet. The toddler on the linoleum floor. The reaching hand at the edge of the frame. He had carried this picture through every foster home, every new school, every last day. It was the only evidence that he had once been small enough for someone to hold. He put it back. He pulled out his notebook. He wrote one line. Day 22. I bought a building today. I do not know why, but I think I was supposed to. He lay down on the sleeping bag. The concrete was cold. The ceiling above him was open beams and wiring and the underside of the flat roof. It was the first roof he had had over his head in 3 weeks. He slept straight through until morning. The next morning, the light through the east windows lit the truck bay in pale yellow stripes. Caleb could see the full layout now. He walked the length of the building, past the cleared corner, past the cinder block partition, down the hallway, the bathroom on the left, the kitchen on the right, the bunk room, past the bunk room, at the very back of the station. He found the locker bay. 6 steel lockers stood in a row against the far wall, each one about 2 feet wide, 6 feet tall, painted red. The paint chipped down to bare metal in places. Number plates screwed to the doors, 1 through 6. The lockers were bolted to the concrete floor, pushed flush against the wall behind them. He opened them one by one. Empty. Dust. Wire hangers. The 4th had a pair of cracked rubber boots. The 6th had a photograph taped to the inside of the door. He leaned closer. A group of men in turnout gear, standing in front of the station. A fire engine gleaming behind them. The corner of the photo read 1994. He closed the door. He stepped back. That was when he saw it. Every wall in the station was red brick with white mortar. Same pattern inside and out. Consistent throughout the building. But the wall behind the lockers was cinder block. Gray. Different mortar. The seam where cinder block met original brick was visible on both sides of the row. Somebody had built this wall after the station went up. It was not part of the original structure. Caleb pressed his palm flat against one of the blocks. Cold. Colder than the brick. The brick had been warming in the morning sun. The cinder block was the kind of cold that belonged to something sealed off from the world. He knocked with his knuckle, solid in the center. He moved his hand left, past the last locker, to the far edge of the wall. He knocked again. The sound changed. Hollow. He got down on his knees. He looked under the locker row. At the base of the wall, on the far left side. The blocks did not quite meet the concrete floor. There was a gap, half an inch, maybe less. He put his hand near the gap. Cool air flowed through it, steady, patient, as if the air had been waiting on the other side, holding its breath for a very long time. There was a room behind the wall, sealed off, walled in, hidden behind 6 bolted lockers that nobody had moved in years. Caleb stood up slowly. His hand was still cool from the air. He looked at the locker on the far right. He grabbed the side of it. He pulled. Nothing. The lag screws were rusted into the concrete. The frames were welded together. The whole row was one continuous unit. He braced his foot against the wall and pulled harder. The locker did not shift a millimeter. He needed more tools than he had. He stepped back. He walked back outside into the morning sun. He crossed the street. The hardware store had a hand-painted sign. Quinlan Hardware. The paint had been touched up so many times the edges of the letters had built up thick. The bell above the door rang when he pushed it. A radio on the counter played a country station at low volume. Patsy Cline. The aisle smelled like cut wood and machine oil. The man behind the register was in his late 50s. Broad shoulders, a flannel shirt, reading glasses pushed up onto his forehead. He looked up when Caleb walked in. He did not say anything for a moment. He just looked. "Help you." "I need a socket wrench," Caleb said. "Maybe a pry bar." The man studied him. Caleb was used to being studied. He stood still and let it happen. "What are you working on?" "The fire station across the street." The man's expression shifted, just a little. The way a face shifts when it hears a piece of news it has been expecting and not expecting at the same time. "You're the one who bought it." "How do you know that? Town this size. There's not much else to talk about." He came around the counter. He led Caleb down an aisle. He pulled a red plastic case from a shelf and handed it over. The weight of it surprised Caleb. The man had lifted it like it was nothing. "Socket set, 3/8 and 1/2 inch. Pry bars on the end of the next aisle. The lag screws in that building are old. They'll fight you. Spray them with penetrating oil first. Let it sit 20 minutes. "How do you know about the lag screws?" The man did not answer immediately. He pulled a small can of WD-40 from a hook on the wall. He added it to the socket case. He walked back to the counter. "Used to volunteer there," he said. "Long time ago." Caleb set the case on the counter. He turned it over. He found the price sticker. $22. He had 9. He looked at the man across the counter. "I have $9. He did not see the point in pretending. The man took off his reading glasses. He polished them on his shirt. He put them back on his head. He looked out the front window, across the street, at the fire station, for longer than the moment required. When he turned back, his eyes were different. "Take the socket set. Bring it back when you're done. I'll pay you." "I know. I don't take charity." The man laughed once, a short laugh, like a cough. "Son, I know what charity looks like. I know what a loan looks like. I know what trust looks like. This is the third one. You'll bring the tools back. I am not worried about it." He held out his hand. "Errol Quinlan. I own the place." "Caleb." "Caleb what?" "Whitaker." For 1 second, 1 full second, the hand in Errol Quinlan's hand did not move. It did not grip harder. It did not loosen. It just stayed. As if the man had received a small electric shock he did not want to show. Then his fingers tightened. Just once. Just briefly. The way a man shakes hands when something has been confirmed. "Caleb Whitaker," he said. "Yes, sir." Errol looked at him. He looked at him a long time, long enough that Caleb began to wonder if he had said something wrong. If a last name in a small town could be a kind of password, the kind that opened a door before you knew there was a door. "Wait here a minute," Errol said. He went to the back of the store. He opened a small refrigerator. He pulled out a brown paper bag. He brought it to the counter and set it down beside the socket set. "Sandwich, coffee. My wife makes extra." "Thank you." "Don't thank me. Just bring the tools back." Caleb picked up the case in the bag. At the door, he stopped. He turned back. "Sir," Errol looked up. "Did you know my parents?" The silence that followed was the kind that has shape, that presses against the walls of a room, that you can feel in the bones behind your ears. Errol did not answer right away. He put both his hands flat on the counter. He looked at them. He looked at Caleb. "Go fix your building, son. We'll talk again." Caleb stood in the doorway for a moment longer. Then he nodded. The bell rang above his head as he stepped back into the gray afternoon. He sat on the concrete pad of the fire station and ate the sandwich first. Ham, Swiss, mustard on wheat. The bread was fresh. The coffee in the thermos was still warm. He ate slowly. He tried to remember the last time someone had handed him food without asking for paperwork first. He could not. Then he went to work. The lag screws in the locker frames were 3/8 inch, rusted solid. He sprayed each one with WD-40. He waited the 20 minutes Errol had told him to wait. He worked them one at a time. The socket wrench had leverage on its side. The first screw took 15 minutes. By the third one, he had the angle figured. He did not know that across the street in the small white house behind the hardware store, Errol Quinlan was sitting in his kitchen. The phone in his hand. The line ringing. He did not know that a woman 3 blocks east in a chair beside a window with a half-finished blue scarf in her lap picked up on the 4th ring. He did not know that Errol Quinlan's voice was lower than usual when he said, "Maeve." A pause. A long one. "Maeve, I think the boy came back." He did not know that on the other end of the line a 78-year-old woman set down her knitting needles with hands that were shaking. Hands that had been waiting 18 years to shake. He did not know any of it. By evening, he had 4 lockers free of the floor. The next morning, he would come back with the rest of his strength. And the row would come apart. That night, he wrote in his notebook, Day 23. The man at the hardware store gave me his tools and a sandwich and would not let me pay. He knew my name before I said it. I think he is afraid of something, or hoping for something. I cannot tell yet. He fell asleep on the sleeping bag. The wind moved against the bay doors. 3 blocks east, Maeve Halloran sat in her chair by the window, the blue scarf in her lap. She did not pick up the needles. She just sat there. She closed her eyes. She moved her lips. She was praying. For a boy she had held once 18 years ago for a single afternoon, when he was 6 months old and the world had not yet broken him. She was praying that he would not stop, that he would keep turning the wrench, that he would open the door, and that he would find what her husband had spent the last decade of his life trying to give him. The first lag screw of the new morning came loose at 12 minutes past 9. Caleb sat back on his heels. He looked at the bolt in his palm, rusted, brown, older than he was. He set it on the concrete floor beside him. Then he moved to the next one. The second screw came faster. The third faster still. By the fourth, he had stopped counting time. He worked with his shoulders and his elbows and the small ache in his lower back that came from kneeling too long on cold concrete. The socket wrench had a rhythm to it. Pull, reset, pull, reset. He gave himself over to the rhythm, because the rhythm was easier than the thinking, because if he thought too much, he would have to think about what Errol had said. The someone in that sentence is Caleb. He knew it. He had known it from the moment Errol's hand had not moved in his. He just did not know why yet. So he kept turning the wrench. By the time the morning light had crossed the locker bay and moved on to warm the cinder block wall, the remaining lag screws were out. He set the pry bar between the second and third locker. He leaned his weight. The welds were old. They had been done by a man in a hurry. They cracked at the seam with a sound like a knuckle popping. The row came apart. He dragged the lockers one by one to the side of the bay. Steel on concrete. Screech. Screech, screech. When the last locker was clear, he stood up. He looked at the wall, and there it was. A door. Heavy steel. Painted red. The paint faded to a dull rust that nearly matched the cinder block around it. Stenciled across the center in white letters so faded he had to step close to read them. Chief. Below that, in smaller type, private. He tried the handle, locked. The key from the auction did not fit. He stood there a moment, just looking at the word private, thinking about how the word had been put there by a man who was now dead. A man who had sealed this door behind a wall behind 6 bolted lockers. A man who had made it so hard to get in that only the right person would ever try. He wedged the pry bar into the gap between the door and the frame. He leaned. The lock was old. The frame was older. On the third pull, the bolt snapped. The door swung inward. With a low groan, cool air poured out. The same air he had felt through the gap at the floor, now washing over him, carrying the smell of old paper and dust and something else, something like pipe tobacco, something like a man. Caleb stepped inside. The room was small, maybe 10 feet by 12, a metal desk against the far wall, 2 filing cabinets on either side, a rolling chair pushed back at an angle, as if the man who had been sitting there had stood up, walked out, and never come back. Photographs covered every wall, framed, glass over each one. Generations of firefighters in turnout gear, group shots, individual portraits, newspaper clippings yellowed at the edges. A calendar hung behind the desk. The page showing March 2017. Caleb did the math without meaning to. 8 years ago. The room had been sealed for 8 years, but the room was intact. No water damage, no mold. The cinder block had kept the weather out completely. A fine layer of dust covered every surface, undisturbed, even. Nobody had stood in this room since the spring of the year Caleb turned 10. He sat down in the chair. It creaked under his weight. It rolled 1 inch on the concrete. On the desk, a leather-bound journal, open to a page, as if the man had been writing in it when something had called him away. The ink was faded blue, the handwriting small and careful. A date at the top of the page, May 14th, 2017. Caleb read the entry. It was a note about a community pancake breakfast. The amount raised, $247. A line at the bottom in slightly different ink. To the fund. As always, TH. Caleb turned back a page. The same handwriting, a different week. A note about a structure fire on Elm Street. Below it, a small star in the margin. And a line. To the Patterson family. $300 from the fund. Anonymous. Per usual practice. He turned back another page. Another star. To Carter Linsky. For his daughter's college tuition shortfall. $420. The boy will not know. That is the point. Caleb turned the pages slower now. The stars came again, and again, and again. A funeral covered. A mortgage payment made the week before a foreclosure. A hospital bill paid. A heating oil delivery in February. A pair of children's shoes for a girl who had outgrown her old ones in the middle of the school year. Every entry signed the same way. TH per usual practice. Anonymous. The man who had written these entries had given away money for decades without ever signing his real name. Without ever telling anyone where it came from. Caleb sat back in the chair. He let out a breath he had not known he was holding. He looked at the photographs on the wall. A man in his 60s stood in the center of a group shot from 1994. Silver hair, a square jaw, a small smile, wearing a chief's helmet, standing in front of the engine, the brass plaque beneath the frame. Theodore Halloran, Chief. Station 7, 1976 to 2016. Theodore Halloran, TH. Caleb said the name out loud. It felt strange in his mouth. The name of a man who had spent 40 years giving away money he never asked anyone to thank him for. Who had sealed his own office behind a wall of cinder block. Who had died in the spring of 2017, and whose name Caleb had never heard until this moment. He turned the page of the journal. He kept reading. The journal moved backward through years. He skipped past entries about training schedules and equipment inventories and small fires in small barns. He was looking for something. He did not yet know what. He found it on a page near the back of the book. The date at the top. October 15th, 2007. Theo's handwriting on that page was different. The letters smaller. The lines tighter together. As if the pen had been pressed harder. as if the man writing had been holding his breath the whole time. The entry was 3 lines. August and Rosalind Whitaker are gone. The boy is 6 months old. He is asleep in a car seat in my office as I write this. I do not know yet what to do with him, but I will not let him be lost. Caleb stopped reading. He could not see the page. His eyes were wet. He blinked. He blinked again. He put both hands flat on the desk. He stared at the names. August Whitaker. Rosalind Whitaker. His mother's name. His father's name. On the birth certificate in the manila folder the caseworker had given him a month ago, the folder he had carried in his duffel bag through 3 weeks of strip malls and gas station bathrooms and park fountains. They were not strangers. They were the man and woman Theodore Halloran had once held in this office at 6 months old. He did not hear the footsteps in the hallway behind him. He only heard the voice. It came from the doorway. Quiet, old. The voice of a woman who had stopped at the threshold and could not yet bring herself to step inside. Oh. Caleb turned. She was small, thin, white hair pinned up, wire-frame glasses, a cardigan buttoned wrong, a cane in her right hand. She was holding the door frame with her left hand. Her knuckles were white. She was looking at him, the way a woman looks at a son she has not seen in 18 years. "You have her eyes," she said. Caleb stood up. The chair rolled back behind him. He did not know what to say. He did not know if his legs would hold him. "You have August's jaw. You have Rosalind's eyes. Oh, sweetheart. Oh, my Lord, you came back." She took 1 step into the room. Her cane tapped the concrete floor. She stopped. She looked at the desk, at the journal open under Caleb's hand, at the chair where Theo Halloran had sat for 40 years, at the photographs on the walls. She lifted her free hand to her mouth. She was crying. She was not making any sound. The tears moved down her face slowly. Caleb did not move. He could not. He had not been touched by an old woman in 18 years. He had forgotten what it was for. To be touched by an old woman. She walked past him. Slowly. Past the desk. To the wall of photographs. She put her fingertips on the glass of one of the frames. A wedding photo. Theo and a much younger Maeve standing in front of the station in 1976. The engine behind them. Theo in a chief's helmet that did not yet have a single dent in it. "Hello, Theo," she said quietly. She turned around. She looked at Caleb. "My name is Maeve Halloran. I am the wife of the man who wrote that journal. I am the woman he sent his last letter to. I am the woman who has been praying for you every morning for 18 years. She paused. She took a breath. "Will you come home with me, sweetheart? I have things to tell you, and I do not think we should talk about them in this room." Caleb opened his mouth. No sound came. He closed it. He nodded. She held out her hand. He took it. Her fingers were thin and cold, but the grip was firm. The way the grip of an old woman is firm when she has decided that something will not be taken from her again. Maeve Halloran's kitchen smelled like cinnamon and lavender soap. The kettle was already on the stove. She had put it there before she had walked over to the station. As if she had known she would be bringing him back, she moved slowly around the kitchen, the cane against the cabinet, the kettle to the burner, 2 mugs from the shelf, white, chipped at the rims, mugs that had been chipped for 40 years and had been kept anyway, because the chipping had happened at home. She set the mugs on the table. She poured. She sat across from him. The light through the kitchen window was the gold light of late afternoon. It fell on the table between them. It fell on her hands. Her hands were spotted with age, the knuckles swollen, the wedding ring still on the left hand. After 8 years, a widow. She looked at him for a long time before she spoke. "Tell me your name, sweetheart. Tell me your full name. I want to hear it from your mouth." "Caleb." "Caleb what?" "Caleb Whitaker." She closed her eyes. She nodded once. "That is your name." "Yes, that is your name." She opened her eyes. "Your mother chose Caleb. Your father chose your middle name. Do you know it?" "Caleb Thomas. Caleb Thomas Whitaker. After your great-grandfather. Thomas Whitaker. He built the first Methodist church in this town in 1903. The same one with the white steeple you walked past 2 days ago." Caleb stared at her. He had a great-grandfather. He had a name that had been chosen by a man and a woman who had loved him. A church in a small town in Ohio had been built by a man whose blood was in his veins. He did not know what to do with the information. He had nowhere to put it. He had spent 18 years being a person with no past. And now he was a person with a great-grandfather. The cup in his hand was warm. He set it down. He could not lift it again. Maeve took a small sip of her tea. She watched him over the rim of the cup. "I will tell you what I know, sweetheart. I will tell you slowly. I will not leave anything out. Do you want me to start from the beginning?" "Yes. Your father was a carpenter. He built houses. He came to the station every Saturday. He was 28 years old when you were born. He had been raised in foster care the same as you. He had no living family of his own. That was why he loved this town so much. We were the family he picked." She paused. "Your mother was a nurse at the clinic in town. She had grown up in Wisconsin. She came down here for a nursing job, and she met your father at a 4th of July picnic at the station. Your father had brought a pie. He could not bake. The pie was awful. Your mother told him so, right to his face. He fell in love with her on the spot." A small smile crossed Maeve's mouth. "She was 26 when she had you. She worked at the clinic until the week before you were born. Your father painted your nursery yellow. He told her yellow was a brave color. She told him yellow was a patient color. They argued about it the whole time he was painting. She kept the yellow." Maeve's hands closed around her mug. "You were a happy baby, Caleb. I want you to know that. You laughed at everything. Your mother brought you to the station in a car seat. She set you on Theo's desk during drills. The men used to pass you around like a football. You did not cry. You laughed. Caleb stared at the table. He did not trust his voice. On October 14th, the elementary school on Maple Street caught fire. The boiler had an electrical fault. The fire moved up through the walls. 14 children were trapped on the second floor. Maeve's voice did not waver. She had told this story before. To someone, probably to herself, many times. In an empty house, in the dark, to no one. Your father and mother were the first ones through the door. They got every child out. 14 children, one at a time, through the windows. Your father carried the last one down a ladder while your mother held the door against the smoke. The stairwell came down. They could not get back out. She paused. She took a breath. They were holding hands when the firemen found them, underneath a section of fallen beam. Your father had pulled your mother into his chest, as if to shield her. They were holding hands. Caleb did not move. He could not. He was thinking of a yellow nursery in a town he had never seen, of 2 young people who had argued about paint, of a woman who had told a man his pie was awful, of 14 children who were now in their 20s, walking around somewhere in this country, probably without knowing whose son the boy across from him was. He was thinking of his mother's hand, in his father's hand, under a fallen beam. You were 6 months old, sweetheart. Theo brought you back to the station that night. We took care of you for 2 days. I held you in this very kitchen. I fed you a bottle. You slept on my chest. I want you to know that. Whatever happened after, you were held. You were not alone in this world. Not at the beginning. Caleb put both his hands flat on the table. He stared at them. The hands of a stranger. The hands of a son. On the 3rd day, the state took you. They placed you in Cleveland. Theo called them every day, then every week, then every month. They told him he had no legal standing. He hired a private investigator. The investigator could not find you. He wrote letters. He filed petitions. He did not stop. Not for 18 years. Caleb looked up. Why? It was the first word he had spoken. Why? He said again. Maeve looked at him. A long look. Because he loved you, sweetheart. Because August and Rosalind were his children too. Because in a small town, a man like Theo Halloran does not let a boy disappear into a system. He keeps looking, even after everyone else has stopped. She paused. And because of one more thing. She stood up. She walked slowly to the hall closet. She opened the door. She reached up to the top shelf. She pulled down something soft, something blue. She turned around. In her hands was a wool scarf, long, folded. The blue of a sky just before evening. The blue of the deep middle of a lake. She walked back to the table. She set the scarf in front of Caleb. He looked at it. He looked at her. I started knitting this, she said, the week your mother told me she was pregnant with you. I told her I would make you a baby blanket. She said she did not want a blanket. She wanted a scarf for when you were old enough to walk. I asked her what color. She said, blue, the color of patience. Maeve sat down. Her hands were shaking now. I started knitting. I did not finish before you were born. I was slow. I worked on it on the back porch some evenings. The week of the fire, I had finished the first 3 feet. After the fire, I could not bring myself to throw it away. So I kept knitting. And every time I finished, I would pull it back out. And I would start over. Because if I finished it, and you were not here to wear it, I did not know what I would do with myself. She reached out. She touched the scarf with her fingertips. I have been knitting this scarf for 18 years, Caleb. I knit it. I pull it out. I knit it again. I pull it out. 18 years. I did not stop. I could not stop. Because if I stopped, it would mean I had given up. And Theo had asked me not to give up. He said, Maeve, the boy will come back. The station will find him. You keep your needles in your hands. Her tears were on the table now. Small dark spots on the wood. Yesterday, Errol called me. After 18 years. He told me the boy had come back. Caleb's hand moved. It moved on its own. It reached out. It touched the scarf. The wool was soft. The blue was the color of his mother's eyes, in a Polaroid he had carried in his wallet for 18 years. He had not known until this moment what color her eyes had been. He had only seen them in black and white. He picked up the scarf. He held it in his lap. He pressed his face into it. He did not cry the way a man cries. He cried the way a boy cries. The way a 6-month-old cries. The way a person cries when they have just learned that they were once loved by a woman who chose the color blue for them. Maeve came around the table. She put her arms around him. She was small. She barely reached his shoulder. She held him anyway. She held him for a long time. The kitchen was quiet. The kettle clicked once on the stove. The clock above the sink ticked. Outside somewhere, a car passed on the street and then was gone. That night, Maeve made him eat. A bowl of chicken and rice she had cooked the day before, as if she had known. He ate without tasting. He kept the scarf in his lap. She made up the couch for him. Old sheets. A wool blanket that smelled like cedar. Before she went to her room, she stopped in the hallway and looked back at him. "There are things in Theo's office I need to find with you," she said. "I have not been in that room in 8 years. I do not have the strength to walk over there alone. Tomorrow, we will go together." "Yes, ma'am." "Maeve. Maeve." She nodded once. She turned off the light. Caleb lay on the couch with the blue scarf folded across his chest. He listened to the old woman move around in the next room. A drawer opening. A drawer closing. A breath. A small cough. The kind of sounds that belong to a house that has held one person for a long time. He pulled the scarf up to his chin. He slept. The next morning, Caleb walked back to the station. The blue scarf was around his neck. He had eaten oatmeal at 6 in the morning. Maeve had pressed his hand before he walked out the door. She had told him she would come over later after she had bathed and gathered the strength. The morning was cold. The light was thin and yellow. He crossed the concrete pad in front of the station. A black SUV was parked at the curb. A man stood beside it, late 50s, silver hair, gray suit. The kind of suit that did not belong in a town with a barber shop whose pole had stopped turning. The man straightened when he saw Caleb coming. "You the new owner?" I am. Sterling Crow. He held out a business card. Caleb did not take it. I develop commercial properties. I have been planning a mixed-use project on this block for 2 years. Retail on the ground floor. Residential above. A parking structure beside it. He looked at the station. This lot is the parking structure. It's not for sale. Everything is for sale, son. I'm not your son. Sterling almost smiled. He did not. 5,000 cash. Today. That is 500 times what you paid for it. You walk away with money in your pocket. You go start a life. You stop sleeping in this drafty box. Everybody wins. No. You haven't heard the second part of the offer yet. Don't need to. 8,000. No. 10. No. Sterling looked at him. A long look. The look of a man who had been told no by boys before and had eventually heard yes. The auction may not hold up. The county sold a property that has a cloud on the title. My attorney is reviewing the chain of records. If the sale was improper, the deed reverts to the county. The county has already signed a letter of intent with me. My deed is signed. Deeds can be challenged. Caleb looked at him. The blue scarf was warm against his throat. You done? Sterling's jaw moved once. He put his hand in his coat pocket. He pulled out the business card again. He set it on the hood of the SUV. He did not look at Caleb when he spoke. I will give you a week to think about it. I don't need a week. A week. Then I filed the petition. He got back in the SUV. He drove away. Caleb stood on the concrete pad. He looked at the business card on the hood mark where the SUV had been. He did not pick it up. He went inside. Maeve came at 10. She walked the 3 blocks with her cane. She stopped at the bay door and looked in. Her eyes moved across the cleared concrete. The stack of fallen ceiling tiles in the corner. The open hallway leading to the back. She had not been in this building in 8 years. She stepped inside. She walked slowly down the hallway. Caleb followed her. In the locker bay, she stopped. She looked at the open steel door. 8 years, she said quietly. I thought I would never walk through that door again. She stepped through. She went to the desk. She put her hand on the back of the chair. She looked down. Under the desk, bolted to the concrete floor, was a fireproof safe. Gray steel. The size of a microwave. A keyhole. No handle on the front. Caleb had seen it the day before. He had not been able to open it. He put that in the year before he died, Maeve said. He told me what was inside. He told me what was for you. She reached into the collar of her dress. She pulled out a thin chain. On the end of it, a small brass key, worn smooth from years against her skin. She unclasped the chain. She held the key out to Caleb. He gave me this the week before he died. He told me to keep it until the boy came. I have worn it every day for 8 years. Caleb looked at the key in her hand. He looked at Maeve. He looked at the safe. She took his hand. She pressed the key into his palm. She closed his fingers around it. It is yours, sweetheart. It has always been yours. Caleb knelt down on the concrete in front of the safe. He fit the key into the lock. He turned. The lock resisted for a moment. Then it gave. With a small, clean click, he pulled the recessed lever on the side of the safe. The door swung open. Cool air came out. Inside the safe were 3 items: a leather document folder, dark brown, cracked at the spine, a thick manila envelope, sealed, no writing on the outside, and a white envelope, sealed with wax. The wax yellowed with age. Across the front, in careful handwriting, Caleb Whitaker. He sat back on his heels. He stared at the envelope. His own name, written by a man who had died 8 years ago, a man he had never met, a man who had loved him without ever seeing his face. Behind him, Maeve sat down slowly in the chair her husband had sat in for 40 years. Her hand went to her chest. She did not speak. Outside, the wind moved through the maples on Briggs Road. Caleb picked up the envelope. He held it in his hand. He did not yet break the seal. Some things you hold first, before you read them. He held the envelope a long moment. The wax yellowed at the edges, the paper heavy. The kind of paper a man chooses when he knows what he is writing matters. Caleb broke the seal with his thumb. A single folded page came out. Just one. Thicker stock than ordinary stationery. The kind of paper a man keeps in a desk drawer for the letters he means to live longer than he does. Behind him, Maeve sat in the chair, both her hands on her chest. She was holding her breath. Caleb unfolded the page. He looked at Maeve. "Will you let me read it out loud?" She nodded. She could not speak either. So he began. "Dear Caleb." The handwriting was the same blue ink as the journal, but slower, steadier, as if Theo had taken his time, as if he had known these were the words that would have to do the work of every conversation he would never have. "I do not know how old you will be when you read this. I do not know what kind of man you will have become. I want you to know I have thought about both. I have thought about you on every birthday I have known about, and the 17 birthdays I have not." Caleb stopped. He breathed in. He kept reading. "I want to tell you 3 things. Maeve will tell you the rest. The first thing is this: your mother was the bravest person I ever knew. Your father was the stubbornest. Together they were the most ordinary, most extraordinary, most decent people I ever served beside. And the night I held you in this office 6 months old and asleep in your car seat, I made you a promise. I would keep their station standing until you came home to it." Caleb's voice caught. He took a breath. He kept reading. "The second thing is that I've spent my life trying to build a small kind of net. A net that catches the people in this town when nothing else does. It is not a charity. It is what a community owes the people who live inside it. The papers in the safe will tell you about it. I am leaving it to you. Not because I think you owe anyone anything, but because I think you will know what to do with it. You are August and Rosalind's son. That is enough. The third thing is the hardest, so I am going to say it plain. Take care of Maeve for me. She is the bravest woman in this story now. She has been waiting beside me for 10 years and alone for 8 more. I asked her to keep her needles in her hands. She did. She kept her promise to me longer than I kept my breath in my body. She does not know how to stop being the woman who waited. She will need someone to remind her how to be the woman who is held. Hold her, son. Just hold her. Yours always, Theodore Halloran, Chief, Station 7, husband of Maeve, the luckiest man this town has ever raised. Caleb set the letter down on the desk. He did not look up. Maeve was crying. She was crying without sound. She was crying the way old women cry, when the tears come from a place deeper than the surface of the face, when the body simply lets the water out, because the dam is too old to hold it anymore. Caleb went to her. He knelt beside the chair. He took her hand. She put her other hand on top of his. He wrote that 3 weeks before he died, she said. He showed me the envelope. He told me where it was. He said, when the boy finds it, he will know he was never forgotten. He said it just like that. Just like that. Caleb did not let go of her hand. He took care of you, Caleb said. For 50 years. He took care of you. Yes, sweetheart. And now I will. Maeve closed her eyes. She nodded. Just once. The leather folder under the desk held the deed. The deed showed that Theodore Halloran had bought the fire station from the county in 2014 for $22,000 of his own pension money. The station had never been abandoned. It had been Theo's property, held outright in his name. Upon his death, the property had transferred into a trust at the county courthouse. The beneficiary of the trust, Caleb Thomas Whitaker, son of August and Rosalind Whitaker. The tax auction had not sold the station. The tax auction had sold the right to pay back taxes on a property that had already belonged to Caleb. From the moment Theo's heart had stopped in his garden in March of 2017, $10 had brought him home to a building that had been waiting for him for 8 years. The manila envelope held the bank records, a trust account, the Station 7 Community Fund, held at County Savings. Beneficiary, Caleb Thomas Whitaker. Most recent balance, $327,412.31. Caleb stared at the number. He read it twice. He read it a third time. He sat on the concrete floor of the office with the page in his lap, and he thought about the bread he had rationed for 3 days, about the peanut butter that had stretched to 5, about the gas station sink at 2 in the morning, about the soup kitchen he had walked 12 blocks to find. He had been carrying a fortune in his name for 18 years, and he had not known. He looked up at Maeve. She was watching him. She knew what he was thinking, the way only an old woman can know what a young man is thinking, because she had once been young, and he was the boy she had held in her kitchen when the world had been kinder than it had any right to be. For 2 whole days, he did not want you to know until you were ready to know, she said. He wanted you to come home first, then to know. The black SUV pulled up to the curb just as Caleb walked back out to the bay door. It was the next afternoon. Sterling Crow had not waited a week. He had waited a day. Sterling got out. This time he had a man with him. A second man. Gray suit. Briefcase. The expression of a man being paid by the hour. "My attorney," Sterling said. "We have filed a petition with the county. The tax sale has a cloud on title. We are requesting a condemnation review. I would like to settle this today, son. I will go $15,000. That is my final offer." Caleb did not say anything. He walked back into the station. He came back out a minute later, the leather document folder in his hand. He handed it to the attorney. The attorney opened it. He read the deed. He turned it over. He read the margin notes. He looked at the notary seal. He closed the folder. He turned to Sterling. "The deed is valid, recorded with the county. The trust provisions are standard. There is no cloud on the title. The prior owner purchased the property outright. He paid taxes on it for 10 years before his death. The current owner inherited via designated trust." A pause. "Mr. Crow, you do not have a claim here. I am advising you to withdraw the petition." Sterling did not move. He stood very still. The way a man stands when the ground he thought he was standing on has been pulled out from under him. Caleb watched him. Then slowly he walked back into the station. He came out with one more thing. A folder he had taken from the filing cabinet that morning. A folder Maeve had pointed him to. A folder with 40 years of donation records inside it. He opened the folder on the hood of the SUV. He turned the pages. He found the page he was looking for. He turned the folder so Sterling could see it. "Bernard Crow," Caleb said. $50 a month, every month, for 20 years. To the Station 7 Community Fund. Sterling did not move. Caleb turned another page. September 1989. College tuition. Full year. For Sterling Crow. Funded by the Station 7 Community Fund. Authorized by Chief Theodore Halloran. Sterling read it. He read it again. He did not move for a long time. Then, slowly, he sat down on the front step of the fire station. In his gray suit, in his polished shoes. He sat down on the same concrete step his father had sat on every Tuesday night for 20 years. Coming off a shift, drinking coffee from a thermos, talking to a chief named Theo Halloran about a town, about a fund, about a way of living that Sterling had never been told the full story of. He put his elbows on his knees. He looked at the ground. The attorney looked at Caleb, then at Sterling. He closed his briefcase. He walked to his car. He drove away. Caleb sat down on the step beside Sterling. For a long time, neither of them spoke. The sun moved across the concrete. A car passed on the street, and then was gone. A bird called somewhere from the maple tree at the edge of the lot. "My father died on a call," Sterling said. "Heart attack. I was 19. I was at Ohio State. I came home for the funeral. I never came back after that. I could not stand the sight of this station. Every time I drove past it, I saw him, coming out of those bay doors, with a smile on his face, coming home to me." He paused. "I told myself I would tear it down. I would put something new over it, so I would not have to remember anymore." Caleb watched him. My father paid for my college, Sterling said. I thought my mother had paid, with his life insurance. My mother told me she had paid, every year. She did not want me to know. He looked at the folder on the hood of his SUV. He looked at the fire station. He paid into a fund for 20 years, and the fund paid me back when he was gone. And I never knew. I never knew until I sat down on this step. Caleb did not say anything. He let the silence do its work. After a long minute, Sterling looked at him. What are you gonna do with this place, son? Caleb looked at the bay doors. He looked at the brick walls. He looked at the cleared concrete inside. I am going to fix it. Sterling nodded once. He stood up. He brushed off the back of his suit. He picked up the folder from the hood. He looked at it. He set it back down. He looked at Caleb. I will not be coming back to make any more offers, son. Caleb nodded. Sterling started to walk toward his SUV. Then he stopped. He turned around. He looked at the fire station for a long time. My father loved this place, he said. I know. I think I forgot. You can come back, Caleb said. Any time. The station remembers you. Sterling stood there a moment. He looked like a man who had just been given permission to come back to his own childhood. He got in his SUV. He drove away. Slower this time. Word about the station spread the way things spread in a small town. Slowly at first. Then, all at once. Errol came every morning before he opened the hardware store. He brought tools, coffee, a patience for teaching that Caleb had not expected. He showed him how to frame a wall, how to run electrical conduit, how to cut drywall so the seam disappeared. Your father could do this in his sleep, Errol said one morning. He was holding a level against a stud Caleb had just installed. He taught me half of what I know about framing. Was he patient? Not even a little. He would rip a wall out and start over if the angle was off by a quarter inch. But he was right every time, so nobody argued with him. Caleb adjusted the stud. The bubble centered. He drove in a nail. A retired electrician named Floyd showed up on a Saturday and rewired the kitchen. He did not ask permission. He just showed up with a tool belt and a bag of wire. A plumber named Earl came the following week. He replaced the corroded pipes in the bathroom. He did not send a bill. A woman from the garden center on the edge of town brought flats of marigolds. She planted them along the concrete pad. Her name was Wilma. She did not say much, but every time she finished planting a row, she stood and looked at the brick wall for a long minute, as if she were saying something to the wall that only the wall would know. None of them said much about why they had come, but Caleb noticed. Each one of them at some point during the day walked back to the office, stood in the doorway for a minute, looked at the photographs on the walls, and then went back to work. Caleb posted the donation records on the community bulletin board at the courthouse. He did not add commentary, just the names, the dates, the amounts given, the families who had received help. 40 years of anonymous generosity, laid out on 8 pages of copies. Within a week, people started coming to the station. A woman in her 40s whose mother had been helped with a hospital bill in 1993. a man whose daughter had received tuition help in 2004, an older couple who would have lost their house in 2008 if an anonymous check had not arrived the week the mortgage was due. They stood in the bay door and held hands. The wife was crying. Each of them had a version of the same story. They had needed help. Help had arrived. Nobody had taken credit. And the fire station that the town had been calling an eyesore for years turned out to be the place where the help had come from. The town's understanding of the building shifted. It stopped being a ruin. It started being a landmark. Maeve came to the station every day. She walked the 3 blocks with her cane. She sat in a folding chair Caleb had set up for her in the bay. She watched the work. She corrected people's stories about Theo when they got the details wrong. She drank tea from a thermos. She brought the blue scarf each morning. She had finished it the day Caleb opened the safe. For the first time in 18 years, she had let herself finish. She had wrapped it around his neck herself at her kitchen table, with both her hands shaking. And she had not pulled it out again. Caleb wore it every day. In the back of the station where the old captain's quarters had been, he began to build an apartment. 1 room, a small bathroom, a kitchenette. He did most of the work himself. Errol checked his framing. The plumber handled the water lines. It took 3 weeks. When it was done, he stood in the doorway of the finished apartment. He looked at the fresh drywall, the new window, the small counter with a coffee maker on it. He turned to Maeve. She was sitting in her chair in the bay. "It's yours," he said, "if you want it." Maeve looked up. "What is mine, sweetheart?" "The apartment. I built it for you." She did not say anything for a long moment. She set down her tea. She stood up, slowly, with the cane. She walked to the doorway. She looked at the apartment, the small window, the counter, the shelf where she could put her books, the corner where her chair would fit. She did not move for a while. "This is your home, Caleb, not mine. It is our home." "No, sweetheart. You are 18 years old. You should not be tied to an old woman." Caleb reached into his back pocket. He pulled out his notebook, the small one, the one he had carried in his duffel bag for 3 weeks of walking. He had written in it every day, a single line, about something he had learned. He opened it to the first page. He read it out loud. Day 1. The county does not give you a coat in October. He turned the page. Day 7. A man on a bus will not ask your name if you do not raise your eyes. He turned again. Day 21. A woman in a diner gave me a cup of coffee I did not order. She said, "Some towns know how to keep a person." He looked up. "I have written every day, Maeve. Every day for 3 weeks. And I will tell you what I have learned. There are people in this country who keep someone in their hearts for 18 years. There are towns that wait. There are women who do not let the needles fall." He paused. "You kept me. In a scarf you would not finish. Now it is my turn to keep you." Maeve put both her hands on the doorframe. She lowered her head. She breathed in. She breathed out. She nodded. "I will bring my things tomorrow." She moved in on a Wednesday. Within a week, she had curtains on the window, a bookshelf against the wall, a garden in the side lot where the old hose tower had stood, raised beds filled with soil from the garden center, tomatoes, basil, peppers. She worked slowly, on her knees, with a wide-brimmed hat against the sun. Caleb sat with her in the evenings. He did not say much. He did not need to. She had spent 18 years in a quiet house. He had spent 18 years in foster homes where the noise had never been the right noise. They had both been waiting for a kitchen. That was the kitchen. Caleb enrolled in community college courses online. He took classes at the kitchen table, structural engineering, business management. He did not know yet what he was building toward, but he wanted to understand how things held together. He used part of the trust to establish the Theodore Halloran Community Fund. He filed the paperwork himself, sitting at the kitchen table, with Maeve across from him drinking tea, with the original journal beside him as a reference. The fund operated the same way the old one had. Small amounts, no publicity. Families in need applied through the county office. The fund covered what insurance and government programs missed. Caleb reviewed each application himself. The first check the new fund issued went to a single mother on the west side of town. Her furnace had died in February. $700. Caleb signed it at the kitchen table. Maeve watched him sign. She did not say anything, but when he set the pen down, she reached across the table and put her hand on his. That was all. Sterling Crow came back on a Saturday in April. He drove his truck this time, not the SUV. The bed of the truck was loaded with lumber, 2x4s, plywood sheets, a stack of cedar planks. He backed the truck up to the bay door. He started unloading without a word. Caleb came out. He helped him carry the lumber inside. They worked in silence for 20 minutes. When the truck was empty, Sterling brushed off his hands. He looked at the station. My father would have wanted me to do this a long time ago. Caleb nodded. Thank you. Sterling got in his truck. He drove away. He came back the next Saturday with drywall. The Saturday after that with paint. He never stayed long. He never asked for anything. He just delivered materials and left. On the third Saturday, Caleb caught him as he was getting back in the truck. Sterling. He stopped. He turned. Caleb walked over. You don't have to keep doing this. I know. Then why? Sterling looked at the station for a moment. Then he looked at Caleb. Because I was 19 when my father died, and I had no idea what I was supposed to do with my life. I went somewhere else, and I made money, and it never felt like enough. And now I think I know why. He looked at the bay doors. I am 55 years old, son. I want to spend the rest of my life on the right side of this street. He got in the truck. He drove away. Spring came slowly to Millbrook Falls that year. The marigolds Wilma had planted came up in early April. Maeve's tomatoes broke through the soil a week later. The maple trees on Briggs Road put out their first green leaves. Caleb spent 2 weeks tracking down the 14 children August and Rosalind had saved. He started with the newspaper coverage. He cross-referenced names against the filing cabinet records. He made phone calls. He sent letters. He wrote to social media accounts that had not been updated in years. He found them one by one. 12 were still in Ohio. One had moved to California. One was serving in the Army overseas. He invited every one of them to a ceremony. He set the date for the second Saturday in May. A week before the ceremony, Errol came into the office with a stack of paperwork under his arm. He set it down on the desk where Theo had sat for 40 years. He stood there a moment. He cleared his throat. Caleb. Caleb looked up from the application he was reviewing. Errol pointed at the list of 14 names. The list Caleb had been working from for 2 weeks, the one taped to the wall above the desk. Read the third name to me. Owen Quinlan. Errol nodded. He did not move. He did not speak for a long moment. Then he said very quietly, "That is my boy." Caleb set down his pen. "Owen is your son." He was 8 years old, 2nd grade, Mrs. Patterson's class. He was on the 2nd floor. Errol's hands were shaking. He gripped the edge of the desk to steady them. Your father carried him down, the 3rd one out of the building, down a ladder. He told me later that your father told him a joke to keep him from crying on the way down. Owen does not remember the joke, but he remembers that your father told it. Caleb stood up. He did not know what to do with his hands. "Why have you not told me this before?" "Because I did not know how to start, son." Errol looked at him. "I have stood in your store for 10 years selling hammers to men who would not have had a son at home if your father had not run into that building. And I have not said it out loud. I did not say it out loud at his funeral. I did not say it out loud at the 10-year anniversary. I have never said it out loud." Errol's eyes were wet. "I told myself I would say it the day his son walked into my store. And then his son walked into my store. And I still could not say it." Caleb came around the desk. He put his hand on Errol's shoulder. Errol put his hand over Caleb's. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Errol said, "He is 26 years old now. He works at the high school. He coaches basketball. He has been waiting 18 years to thank you. He told me so on the phone last night." Caleb closed his eyes. He nodded. "Bring him to the ceremony. He is already coming." The day of the ceremony was warm. The sun came up over the ridgeline at 6 in the morning. By 8, the dew was off the grass. By 9, Maeve was in her chair in the bay, in a blue dress that matched the scarf around Caleb's neck. By 9:30, people had started arriving. Errol came across the street with Owen. Owen Quinlan was 26 years old, tall, broad shoulders, the same square jaw as his father. He held his father's arm as they walked across the street, as if he understood that today his father needed to be held up. Caleb met them at the bay door. He held out his hand. Owen took it. He did not shake it. He held it. "My name is Owen Quinlan. Your father saved my life. I have wanted to meet you for a long time." Caleb could not speak. Owen looked at him. "Thank you for coming home." That was all he said. The other children came, the ones who were children no longer. A woman who had been 4 years old. She brought her daughter, who was now 7, the age she had been when her mother had been carried out. She knelt down in front of the plaque. and read her own name from the list. She showed her daughter where her name was. Her daughter touched the brass with one finger. A man who had been 7. He had grown up to be a teacher. He told Caleb that he taught at the same elementary school. They had rebuilt it on the same lot. He taught 4th grade. A woman who had been 6. She had become a nurse. She told Caleb that she had become a nurse because of his mother. She had only learned when she was 23 that the woman who had carried her down a hallway full of smoke had been a nurse herself. She had decided that day to apply to nursing school. Each of them stood for a minute in front of the plaque. Each of them touched a name. The brass plaque was mounted beside the front entrance. It read, "In memory of August and Rosalind Whitaker, volunteer firefighters, who gave their lives on October 14th, 2007, saving 14 children from the Maple Street school fire. Their courage is remembered. Their son carries it forward." Below their names in smaller type were the names of the 14 children they had saved. About 40 people were on the concrete pad. Caleb gave a short speech. He did not know how to give a speech. He said only, "Thank you for keeping their names safe. Thank you for keeping their station safe. Thank you for keeping me a place to come home to." Maeve stood beside him. She did not let go of his hand the whole time. At the back of the crowd, a small woman in a white blouse and a folded apron over her arm stepped through the bay door. She was carrying an apple pie covered with a white linen cloth. Caleb saw her. He stopped speaking. He stepped down from the small wooden box he had been standing on. He walked through the crowd. He met her at the edge of the concrete pad. "You came," he said. "I told you I would, sweetheart. If you ever came back, you would eat at my counter and not pay. Today, you did not have to come to me. Today, I came to you." She held out the pie. He took it. "I closed the diner for the morning. The open sign is hanging the other way, just like the first day. Delphine, I want to introduce you to someone." He took her by the elbow. He led her through the crowd. Maeve stood up from her chair when she saw them coming. "Maeve, this is Delphine. She is the woman who gave me a hot meal and a $20 bill the morning I walked into this town with nothing." Maeve looked at Delphine. Delphine looked at Maeve. The two old women stood looking at each other for a long moment. Two women who had spent their lives keeping people in different ways, one with a counter and a coffee pot, the other with a pair of knitting needles and a refusal to let a scarf be finished too soon. "Thank you," Maeve said, "for feeding our boy." "Thank you," Delphine said, "for waiting for our boy." They held each other's hands. Caleb stepped back. He let the two of them have the moment. He turned around. He looked at the crowd on the concrete pad. The 14 children who were children no longer. Their parents and spouses and small ones. Sterling Crow in a flannel shirt standing at the edge of the crowd with a paper plate. Errol and Owen side by side, both of them looking at the plaque without speaking. Wilma the gardener was kneeling at the edge of the marigold bed, deadheading a single flower that had bloomed too early. Floyd the electrician was talking to Earl the plumber. Both of them were holding hot dogs. The bay doors were open. The station was full of folding chairs. Someone had set up a cooler of lemonade. Errol had brought a portable grill from his store. Children Caleb had never met were running through the bay and out the back. It was the first time the station had been full of people since the day it had closed. That evening, after everyone had gone home after the folding chairs were stacked against the wall, Caleb climbed the steel ladder to the flat roof. The sun was going down over Millbrook Falls. The sky turned from orange to purple along the ridgeline west of Main Street. The lights in the houses came on one at a time. Yellow squares in the growing dark. Below him, Maeve sat on the front step of the station. With a reading lamp plugged into the outdoor outlet Caleb had installed the week before. She was knitting again, but this time she was knitting something smaller. A baby blanket. She had told him that afternoon, "This is for your children, sweetheart. Someday, when you have them, I want them to have a blue blanket from me." He had not known what to say, so he had just kissed the top of her head. Across the street, Errol was closing the hardware store. He saw Caleb on the roof. He raised one hand. Caleb raised his. The station's old brass bell hung above the main entrance. He had found it in the storage loft, buried under boxes, green with tarnish. He had spent 2 evenings polishing it with steel wool and brass cleaner until it shone. Errol had helped him mount it above the door on the original bracket. The bracket was still bolted to the brick. Caleb sat on the edge of the roof, his feet hanging over the side. He reached into his wallet. He pulled out the Polaroid. The baby on the linoleum floor. The toddler with one hand reaching toward the edge of the frame. He set it on the ledge beside him. Beside the Polaroid, he set a photograph he had taken from the office wall. His parents, August and Rosalind Whitaker, in their turnout gear, standing in front of the engine. His father grinning. His mother with one hand on her hip and an expression of calm in her eyes. Beside those 2 photographs, he set a third, a new one, taken that afternoon by Errol with his phone. Caleb standing between Maeve and Delphine on the front step of the fire station, the blue scarf around his neck, the brass plaque visible behind them, Errol's arm draped over his son Owen's shoulders at the edge of the frame, Sterling Crow in the background lifting a paper cup in something like a toast. 3 photographs on a ledge. A baby, 2 parents, and a young man who was no longer alone. The station glowed beneath him, the windows lit warm against the darkening street. The brass bell caught the last of the light and held it. The front door of the station stood open. Light from the truck bay spilled out onto the sidewalk and reached the curb. Maeve turned a page of her knitting pattern. The evening settled in. Caleb Whitaker was 18 years old. He had a building with good bones. A woman 1 floor below who remembered his parents. A man across the street who had given him tools before he had given him his name. A friend in a diner who had fed him before she knew his last name. And a fund his parents' courage had earned. Held for him by a chief he had never met. For 18 years, he thought of the caseworker. He thought of the thin manila folder. He thought of the woman who had pushed the tissue box toward him, as if it were a script she did not know how to escape. He hoped she was doing all right. He hoped she knew that her job was not the whole of him. He hoped she knew that the boy with the thin folder had a home now, and a town, and a chair across from his at a kitchen table. He leaned back on his hands. He breathed in. The station held steady beneath him. The door was open. The light was on. Below him, Maeve set down her knitting. She looked up at the roof. She could not see Caleb from where she sat, but she knew he was there. She put her hand on the cool brick of the doorway. She said quietly to the bricks, to Theo, to the man she had loved for 52 years. He came home, Theo. He came home. You were right. The station found him. The bricks did not answer. The bricks did not have to. A small wind moved down Briggs Road. It stirred the maples. It rang the brass bell once, just once. A clean, clear note that traveled the length of the empty street. Across the way in an apartment above the hardware store, Errol Quinlan stood at his window. He had heard the bell. He put his hand against the glass. He smiled. Caleb sat on the roof. He looked at the 3 photographs on the ledge beside him. He looked at the lights of the town. He looked at the small white square of his great-grandfather's church steeple, visible above the rooftops. He thought of his notebook, the one he had carried in his duffel bag, the one he still wrote in every night. He pulled it out of his back pocket. He wrote one line, Day 57. I am home. He closed the notebook. He put it back in his pocket. The night came down over Millbrook Falls. The lights stayed on. The door stayed open. And below him on the front step of the station, her husband had loved for 40 years. Maeve Halloran picked up her needles again and began the next row of a blue baby blanket for a child who had not been born yet, for a future that for the first time in 18 years she could let herself imagine. The station was quiet. The brass bell was still. The boy was home.